It was in April 2010 that a fire in a flat on the 9th floor of Shirley Towers in Southampton ended in tragedy. 2 firefighters died. Alan Bannon was 38 and from Southampton. Jim Shears was 35 and from Poole.
It was early evening and Kirsty Hoffman was cooking tea in the kitchen for her partner, who was in the lounge with their baby son. Kirsty smelt burning. She assumed it was coming from outside of the flat. By the time that she and Carl realised the burning smell was coming from the curtains that Carl had earlier placed in the uplighter while hoovering, they were fairly well alight. Carl tried to extinguish the flames with a bottle of Dr. Pepper. At about this point, sprinklers would have kicked in. The area around the window would have been wet, their baby son would have been safe, and the fire would have been out. They would have needed a new sofa, some new curtains, a new lamp. The lounge probably would have needed redecorating. But that's not what happened. Instead, the fire took the lives of 2 firefighters and had a traumatising effect on not only the life of my family, but of all firefighters that attended that shout and also many other people. There are many heartbreaking things about that night, but one of the hardest to come to terms with is the similarity between the fire at Shirley Towers and the fire at Harrow Court in Stevenage. That fire happened 9 years ago, and as in Shirley Towers, 2 firefighters lost their lives, and along with that of a resident. The key recommendations for Harrow Court were fitting of sprinklers and improvement to surface-mounted cables. So in order for you to understand the human and very real impact of failing to take on board the recommendations laid out by the coroner in his Rule 43, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our story from that night. It was a day after Easter Monday. I had the day off work and I was trying to decide what to do with our kids. My brother Alan called me. Once again, he'd got dates confused in his diary and he suddenly had a free morning. So we met up with kids and we played at the park for hours. Alan took several photos on his phone. Our last moments together captured on film. Those are now lost forever because his phone was with him during the fire. At 6:30 that evening, Alan pocket dialed me. I could hear him talking in the background. It's the last time that I would hear his voice. He'd gone on shift at 6 p.m. and at roughly 8:10 was called out to the fire. He and Jim Shears were the second BA team sent in. By 9:40, Alan was pulled out of the flat, and despite extensive efforts, it was too late. The events of that night have been well documented, and I've sat through the discussions of the timeline again and again. At 1 o'clock in the morning, our phone rang and woke us, and my heart raced. It can't be good news. Nobody calls you with good news in the middle of the night. And for me and Keith, my husband, it was the second time in under a week that we'd been woken in the middle of the night. The last time was a call from Keith's dad, who'd had a nasty fall, and both of us expected it to be news about him. Keith answered the phone and I asked how his dad was. He said, "It's not Dad, it's Alan." And I thought, what does he want at this time of the night? Keith replied, "He's dead." And with those few words, my family was plunged into a nightmare of grief, publicity, and questions, which 4 years on still have not disappeared. My children lost their favourite and closest uncle. My husband lost his best friend. My parents lost their only son. My 5-year-old niece lost her daddy. And then somewhere in amongst all of that, I lost my brother. Some parts of the nights and weeks that followed are completely blank. For example, I'm unsure of what friends and family attended Alan's funeral. At other times, it's completely clear in my mind. I can remember every tiny little detail. And at times, I relive those events, even now. In particular, phone calls that I made to my family and friends, replaying conversations over and over in my head, berating myself for not acting differently, with more compassion, for not going to see people instead of telling them on the phone. But we were under pressure. It felt like it was a race to call important people in our lives and tell them what had happened, even though I had no idea what had happened myself. Alan and Jim's names were going to be released to the media, and the frenzy was going to begin. Having lost a grandparent and watched friends and wider family go through the loss of a loved one, I thought I understood what grief was. I had absolutely no idea. True grief and the sudden loss of a loved one is so much more than a deep sadness. Combined with the stress of our situation, it was all-encompassing. It's physical as well as mental. It physically hurts. It makes you feel sick for days and weeks. I had a lump in my stomach, a real proper ache in my heart, and I felt sick, properly sick, for weeks. In the initial weeks, I stopped eating. In fact, I ate pretty much nothing for 3 weeks, until eventually a friend at work noticed and intervened. Strangely, in those first few weeks, I don't think I cried. I couldn't. I was too scared to let myself. At one point on the first night, I dropped my dad back home and I went to our house, which is just 2 doors away, to see Keith. And he'd stayed at home with our children. And he asked me if it was true. Was Alan really dead? And he started to hug me. And then, just like you see on the TV, I felt myself crumple to the ground and I started to shake. And I thought, I can't do this. I cannot break now. So I pulled myself up and shook myself off and thought, this is just going to have to wait. And I guess at that time is when I really became the strength and the glue for our family and not allowing myself to deal with my grief. That initial call had come from my mum. And as I said, they were 2 doors away. So I ran along the road to their house. And believe me, we just had the conversation, I never run. And I took one look at Mum and I knew that it was true. So I ran back home, chucked my jeans on over my PJs, grabbed my car keys and broke every speed limit to drive my parents to my brother's home. No idea why it mattered so much to get there so quickly, but it did. We were met by a police and family liaison officer and also a fire family liaison officer. And I remember the disbelief that everything that was being said to us, I had no frame of reference, nothing to compare it to. We were all in a complete vacuum. We drank bucket loads of tea. We sat and stared at each other. We hugged each other. And we waited the night out, second by second, waiting for details, which never came. I started making phone calls to my family, and I didn't want a single person that knew Alan to find out from the TV or from the radio. I felt completely torn. I needed to be with Mum and Charlotte, Alan's wife, but my dad was now home in bed. He'd completely shut himself down and locked himself away. I was worried about him. I needed to be with Keith. I needed to be with my children. I needed to be in so many different places at once, and I just didn't know what to do, how to make it better. So I drank tea. And we waited the night out together. We'd agreed not to wake Abby, Charlotte and Alan's daughter. She was only 5 years old. We wanted her to get what would be her last good night's sleep for many, many months. But equally, I wanted her to wake up. I wanted her to get it over and done with. I wanted to get out of Alan's home. Eventually, Abby did wake up, and Charlotte and me and Mum did the hardest thing we've ever done. We broke a little girl's heart. We told her that her daddy had died and that he was never coming home again. I couldn't comprehend what had happened. I was struggling to understand gone forever myself. How do you even begin to understand and explain that to a 5-year-old? Later, I tried to explain to my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old the concept of death and forever, and how their beloved uncle had died. They had questions I couldn't answer. Why? How? Why wasn't he wearing his fire kit? If he was wearing his fire kit, then why did he die? How did the fire start? The questions went on for days, weeks, months and years. And even this morning, when I told them where I was coming, once again they were asking questions. When we drove past fire headquarters, when they heard the news on the radio, sometimes there would be nothing for days. And then sometimes it was question after question, while stood in the middle of Asda, because Uncle Alan was on the front page of the newspaper, and there was some poor old woman stood next to me, being confronted by my 4-year-old, asking her why his Uncle Alan had to die. My day for those first few weeks consisted of getting up early, really early for me, waiting till Keith woke, going along to my parents, convincing my mum to stop washing her windows at 6:30 in the morning, or whatever cleaning task she'd come up with, sitting and drinking tea while she cried her heart out, coming home, dealing with the kids and their questions over breakfast, checking on Mum again, trying to convince Dad to get up. I began to dread every day. I wanted Mum to stop crying, I wanted Dad to talk to me or anyone, and I wanted my brother back. The whole day of the funeral was completely surreal. Alan's coffin was carried on a fire engine, and the funeral cars followed. We had police outriders on bikes, stopping traffic at junctions. It was like being in a film. As we came out the bottom of the road, the traffic on the other side stopped. All through the city, as we passed people, they stopped their cars. Some got out and stood with their heads bowed. It was one of the saddest and most amazing things. As we reached the centre of Southampton, the general public and the emergency services staff, not just firefighters, but ambulance staff and police were lining the streets. There were upwards of 800 people at his service. The reason for telling you this is so that you can start to understand the real human and the very real impact of not considering the recommendations. There were a lot of recommendations that came out of the 4-week inquest, but nothing that I can say today or that you will read can ever truly explain the impact. I sat through every minute of Alan and Jim's inquest, and I can talk you through the events of that night probably better than most. But one of the most important recommendations, the one thing that would have saved the lives of Alan and Jim without question, is sprinklers. Sprinklers save lives. It's simple, it's irrefutable.